Hi, everyone. Good evening. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today again for another edition of our Cybersecurity Mentoring Group. And I hope you are keeping well and happy holiday to everyone who is celebrating one holiday or the other today. Today, again, we are having a cybersecurity expert, and I will believe you will be we'll be learning something important from today. Before we go into introducing our guest today, I would just like to observe some house rule. We hope everyone will put off their mic and except when we get to question and answer section, then we will be able to entertain questions and possibly even put it in the chat room. But for the next 45 minutes, we want to have a conversation about something that we think is important as cybersecurity professional and also neglected. So before I introduce our guest, I would like to just go through some basic things. Cybersecurity Mentoring Group is a platform where we share, we learn, and we connect with cybersecurity professionals, and is basically a learning community where we share experience from people who have gone through that journey. And some of us are probably just starting, and some want to begin that journey. Now, we bring in professionals to learn from their experience. And so we basically have a chart, and we try to extract value that we can take away to then become a better professional. I'm currently working on Q1 2025 common vulnerabilities and exposure. CVs are published on a daily basis, and this basically shows the exposures that are out there, the vulnerabilities that are inherent in systems, softwares, and this is published and tracked and made available to cybersecurity community. I'm currently working on Q1 2025. In fact, last week there was a bit of this week it was a bit of a scare. The MITRE group, which is really in charge of supporting and maintaining the database of vulnerabilities, is being funded by the United States government. And there was a scare that the contract was going to expire, and we weren't sure whether they were going to be renewed. So that was on the 15th or so, until the 16th. But thankfully, we got the news later in the evening that the contract has now been extended for another 11 months. So for the next 11 months, we will still be able to get vulnerabilities that are being exploited. And you know the implications if nobody knows what is going on, because the database is no longer available and people are no longer publishing. So we'll still have another 11 months to enjoy this database, and I'm looking at it currently to bring out insights that as cybersecurity professionals we can then use to improve our cybersecurity practices in our organization. Also, we will be able to help product managers and software developers in terms of the common vulnerabilities that are out there that they can strengthen their design processes to cover, so that they don't design software that are vulnerable to some of these common vulnerabilities that we are familiar with. So that will be published. I am working towards getting it out, hopefully before the next session of Cybersecurity Mentoring Group chat, or before the end of the month. So please look out for it, and then we will see how much insight we can extract from that. All right, I will go straight into our conversation today, and let me go back to my screen so that I can see my video. All right, please do confirm. All right, I think I can. Sorry, excuse me, I'm just trying to check. I am not sharing. Am I sharing my screen? Please, can you see my screen? Excellent. I think you can. Shola, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Welcome. Okay, excellent. Excellent. All right. Welcome, Shola. And I'm trying to see. I want to make sure that the focus is not myself but you, but I need to have the screen on it. So let me just stop sharing for a second and I will share my screen. All right. Just now. This is up. All right, excellent. All right. Welcome. So one thing I didn't mention in my mail usually is to talk about the person that will be engaging today. I didn't mention, but Shola and I, we've probably known ourselves for maybe 10 years now. I can't remember, but I think, yeah, we were in InterSwitch together for a number of years before Shola left InterSwitch. And we had a good relationship. Maybe Shola will say otherwise. Well, but we had a good relationship. But what are we talking about today? In my post online, I mentioned that the little things are infinitely the most important thing. And that's a quote from Author Dole. And it's that cyber threats become more frequent and complex. Organization must return to basics, right? Because even the most advanced defenses can crumble if the fundamentals are weak. And these are things that people really neglect. So in today's discussion, we want to dive into what we call basic cyber hygiene. I know that some people may actually think, what's exactly is there about basic? You know, it's basic. We should be talking about the advanced things. But as we will see, and we'll hear from Shola, some of the serious attacks that organizations have faced have been as a result of the basic things that were neglected. So I don't want to preempt Shola's our discussion, but Shola will be sharing thoughts on those type of things. And what I just want you to take away from this session is to think around the basic things and think around the implications of not doing the basic things and lessons from organizations that have been impacted as a result of failures in the basic things. So I will now welcome Shola. Thank you for joining us today. And we're happy to have you and to contribute to the community.
Thank you, Wally. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. As we will do, we'll try to get to meet our expert for the day. And I just want to ask for, a basic introduction of Shola. We want to know as much as possible, but also as you are comfortable to share. So Shola, can we meet you?
Okay. Hello to everyone who's joined this call. I'm guessing we've taken you from your families or from your busy weekend schedule, but thanks for making it. It's let's call it a part of networking and knowledge sharing, which is always good. So to introduce myself, my name is Sola Ayodele. Like Wally said, we've known each other for a number of years. We had a very good, relationship, which really is very key. So for those of you who are new in the industry, you need to have, I don't know what word to use, but I mean, like wherever you work, you need to have good relationship with the people around you, whether they're technical or non-technical. It just makes work much better and much more fun. For me, my background and where I am now, it's nothing too fancy, don't worry. I studied, yeah, it's probably like the traditional route. I went to school. I wanted to study engineering, but my father insisted I study computer science. So I studied computer science against my will, but somehow I guess it has paid off. So I should still go and say thanks to my dad. Um, so I finished, I remember, I think I was in my 400 level, and I saw a friend of mine who was studying, he was reading the CISA manual. It's funny because when you're young, they keep asking you, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? I had no idea as a child. And even as a 400 level student of computer science, I still had no idea what I wanted to do until I saw that CSAM manual. And then I just opened it, flipped through it, I got the whole idea of, auditing and say, okay, you want to assess an environment, and at the end of the day, you want to give value back to that organization by saying, oh, these are not in place, this is not compliant, or this can be done better. And that was just where everything kind of clicked for me. So right out of school, I started studying for my CISA, and before I wrote my CISA before I got my first job, but even the first job was not, it had nothing to do with like auditing or compliance. But as soon as I got into the organization, so sorry, I know this is an introduction, but I'm also giving you tips right from the start. As soon as I got into that organization, I told myself I wanted to do IT auditing. My day one, I got my laptop and I said, where is the IT audit department? And they told me it's that way. After just doing a few onboarding courses, I went straight there, found the audit manager, and told him I was interested in doing IT audits. He said there was no opportunity at that time. After a year, my contract was ending, and just towards the end of the contract, he reaches out to me and says, oh, we're actually hiring. And that's how I ended up working with him. By the way, that was an organization called Protivity Member Firm Kuwait. So I started working with Protivity Kuwait. Um, so basically, that's how my cybersecurity journey started. From there, I went on to do my master's in forensics and system security. Uh, I came back. That was in London. Then I came back and I worked with 21st Century. After 21st Century, I moved to InterSwitch, um, where I was a cybersecurity engineer. From InterSwitch, I went to a fintech called Arca Payments, where I became the CISO of Arca Payments. And from there, I moved to 54 Gene, um, where I was the senior director of cybersecurity, and then I believe I left the country after that, and I came to Canada, and I've worked in a couple of places here. Well, actually, I worked at the LCBO Ontario, and now I work at an organization called Équité Association. So that's a brief summary of my journey so far. I don't know if I'm going to go anywhere else. This might be the full stop for me. Well, is there anything that I've missed out or
Yeah,
you'd like
yeah,
me?
excellent, Shola. Thank you for that introduction. I think you need to go meet Daddy and thank him for forcing you to do computer science. Thank you for that introduction. Now let's get into the meat of the conversation. So, um, I know, like I said earlier, because we said this is basic cyber hygiene, people will think, well, this is foundational. But from your experience, Shola, what would you? So we're going to go through a list of basic cyber hygiene that organizations should practice. So I don't know whether it's going to be the most important thing, but your choice. Let's start. Which will be your number one basic hygiene that cybersecurity professionals should make sure exist in their organization?
First of all, yeah, I don't want anybody to be put off by the term basic. And when Wale was doing the intro, he said it basic, but oftentimes neglected. Wh- I've seen this almost everywhere I've worked. I'm sure Wale has seen it almost everywhere he's worked. Sometimes you even work with like you hear about really fancy organizations, Amazon and whatever. But trust me, if you hear about a breach in any of these organizations, it's nothing complex. It wasn't a brute force, it wasn't anything. It's something as simple as a bad password. So I guess that would be the first thing for me. It is the kind of passwords that we use in organizations or the the configuration of those passwords, right? The policies around those passwords. And why I love cybersecurity is because it doesn't just apply to the workspace. It applies to even you as an individual. So, like one of the things I try to teach my son, and he's just 7, but I do tell him the same thing. Like, if you ask him for his password now or the password to his tab, he's not going to give it to you because I've told him I'm like it's like underwear. You don't share your underwear, do you? He'll say no, I don't. So he's not going to tell you his password. So we need to start instilling that as early as possible. But like I said, um, so there is this credential dump called Collection 1, I believe, and it happened in 2019 where they were able to harvest 773 million credentials. 773 million. So, and that is, and the reason why they're able to get this is because these things are weak. So they most likely will brute force, use dictionary attacks, and get access to these passwords. There are obviously other controls that you could have put in place, but even with, I mean, like the first thing would have been to make sure that you use strong passwords. And I think there's something someone used to say. They would say, build it in, don't bolt it on. So that pretty much means from the start, you bake in these security controls into your environment, into your systems, into your user accounts. So it's kind of like now, once upon a time it was very easy to, you could use any password. You could use 3 characters, 4 characters. There was no complexity set. But for a lot of applications now, websites, when you want to subscribe, they'll tell you, oh, it doesn't meet the complexity requirement. It's not long enough. You need to include special characters. That is what it means to build it in. So that same attitude is, or that same behavior is what we need to take into the businesses, into the organizations to say, let's not even leave room for it. Let's configure it from the start that these things are complex. And then, so I mean, I'm not talking about pen testing, but when you do things like pen testing of your environment also, most times I've seen it, they will detect, or that is pretty much where they will start from. They will look for these weak credentials because that's all you need. You just need one vulnerability, one weak credential, and you're in. Then they can do the fancy work of lateral movement, privilege escalation. But trust me, if you give them the weakest credential, the credential of your front desk officer, or I don't know, whatever role you think is not technical, or this person doesn't work on a server, they can take it and convert it to whatever they need. So I'll stick with passwords as my number one.
Excellent, Shola. Thanks for also letting us know the idea of maybe security by design.
Correct.
Building it into the system. And one thing also that I will share, as I said, I will just try to share. As you share, I will just try to add some. So I've seen what we call a ban password list, and some platform would have you define what they call a ban password, what it means. So Shola mentioned 773 credentials. What they would do is take that 773 as part of what you can't use, right? I have seen another one that is about 14, is it 14.3 billion passwords, that they would then make sure that none of the words on that list is used as a password. The other one I've also seen in terms of ban password is that if you are an organization in the financial sector, they would define some words about the organization that they can't use. You'll be surprised to hear that people who work in banks use the name of the organization as password. Some of them even use the name of their product. So in that banned password list, they would then say, if our organization is, for instance, say ABC, none of the letters or none of the words in your password must have ABC. If you have a product called, say, Amazon, none of the word Amazon must feature in your password. So thank you so much for that number one, which I think is very, there are tools that actually focus on targeting password. In fact, when I facilitated a session on CompTIA, one of the tools we used was to generate passwords. If you give me some details about yourself, up to your date of birth and all of those things, we use that to generate thousands of passwords that we can then use to attack a credentials. Thank you. Shola, let's go to the number 2. What's your number 2 in terms of basic hygiene?
I think the number 2 will just ride on from passwords, and that's MFA. So multi-factor authentication. It just puts in an additional layer that they have to, another a hurdle that they need to jump over to get in, which is usually very difficult for them. And then though these attackers would then have to rely on, social engineering to see if they can get it. So, with using just like username and passwords, you can, all these brute force attacks can work. Dictionary attacks, like, Wally said, you can take these dumps of compromised credentials and run it against an attack. Those of you who are familiar with the Kali Linux OS, and you're able to run attacks there, you can use some of the tools there to run these attacks. So it's very easy for the attacker, which is why you need to make it as difficult as possible for them to break into your system. So MFA is really very important. So, I mean, I think some of us might be aware of like the scams on Facebook and WhatsApp. And in fact, I think about 3 weeks ago, one of the groups I was in on WhatsApp was, somebody's account had been compromised. And, I was here working right at my desk, and I just got a call, and he says, so it's all this cheap scam, like, oh, we're having a Zoom meeting at 8 p.m. Did you get the code for the Zoom call? I was confused, like, what code? What are you talking about? I was like, oh, didn't I get the code? Okay, you send it to me now. And, I got the code, which is my OTP from WhatsApp for, like an account reset. But you wouldn't know that, right? So he kept saying, no, tell me what code that is. Of course, I just gave him, like, I said 000419, and then he got upset and insulted me. But yeah, so even for your WhatsApp, MFA is very important. Sometimes if you talk to family members, you hear about a lot of them that have lost, their accounts because they didn't enable the MFA. So it's the same thing with your, with the work environment. We need to make sure that these controls are in place, that we enable MFA. Yeah, I think there was this Twitter Bitcoin scam. I don't know if everybody remembers it. It happened around 2020, and it was the same. It was the same thing that happened. I think was the credentials of one of the Twitter employees that was compromised because there was no MFA enabled. So you can see that it does impact the big. I said in the beginning, right? The big organizations as well, even though we call these things basic. So yeah.
Excellent, Shola. Thanks. Just also to add, so people sometimes will complain about MFA because it's almost like you want to log in, you put in your username, you put in your password, and something is saying go to your phone, and then you start complaining. MFA has been a savior for a lot of people because password can be guessed with quantum computer or computing. They can easily do some kind of brute force on your system and possibly get a password. But what would make them go a step further is the absence of an MFA, and that's why somebody was asking Shola to him to provide his MFA. Now, some of the mandatory requirements under MFA is that you should at least minimum have all your administrators MFA. In fact, it is one of the requirements for some of these standards that your administrators must have MFA on their own account. Because once an administrator is compromised, your organization is in trouble. So don't see MFA as trouble. It's again, it might be inconveniencing, but it is something that is worth it, because there are people that are looking for how to get into your system, and MFA has been proven as one of those mechanisms that you can put in place to make it more difficult for the bad guys. Let's move on to the third point, Shola.
Third point. Third point, I would say, is patch management. So I honestly, I really want to give so many examples of this, but I don't want to expose organizations. But like, patch management is so critical. Same like same way they look for your credentials, username, passwords, they also look for vulnerabilities in your system. And they ride on those vulnerabilities, right? Those are the things that open you up. That is what a patch is for. It's almost, like same concept like a tire patch, right? There's a hole in the tire and then you need to plug it with a patch. So there's a hole in your application or in your systems, in the config, in the security, and then you need to patch it. Um, there are a lot of things to consider when doing patch management. First of all, it depends on the organization you are in. You need to consider like compliance standards that you're bound to, regulatory requirements. Those things can help determine how to patch, what to patch, when to patch, right? Ideally, there should be a patch schedule in place that says critical patches, are done at this frequency, maybe every week or whatever, or every month. Um, Medium or for I can't remember the categorization anymore, but you've basically formed your own categorization. This is done frequently, this is done less frequently. And one key thing that a lot of people overlook when it comes to patch management is actual testing of those patches. And we have to be very careful when patching systems. Like I've patched a system and then that system didn't come back up again. And it is very possible. Yes, it's a legit patch, but it was not tested and it adversely impacted that, the system it was on. So there's a lot that you need to do, even like sanitizing or like reviewing the patches. Some of the patches might be superseded. So depending on the kind of system you're using to deploy these patches, some will automatically, I think Microsoft, I think they roll it up or something, but they find a way to like bundle some patches into one and, supersede others. So some will not be necessary, but some systems just keep a catalog of everything and then you can just push 100 useless patches and then there might be conflict. So those are things you need to look at, and I mean, there are deeper levels of, doing a risk assessment into certain systems even before you patch them, because you might want to even accept, some risks, but we won't go deep into all of that. So you need to be able to test out your patches, make sure they don't have an adverse effect. And sometimes one of the ways you can do that is to like let's say you can like clone a machine, you make another copy, or you can test on a backup of a certain machine, depending, cloud, VM, if you have those kind of environments, you can easily make a duplicate and test in a different environment. So I think an example of a breach that we might be aware of is Equifax in 2017. Um, they had a breach because they didn't patch their Apache server. And yeah, that was how the attackers went in. It was a huge breach that year. So once again, big organizations that are being hit. So these are the simple things, the basics as we call them, yet very, very critical.
Yeah, thanks. In fact, earlier I introduced the common vulnerability exposure, Q1 2025, that I'm working on. And when I checked, there were 12,056 vulnerabilities that were published in 2025 so far. Comparing to last year, it was almost 40% difference, right? So it means that we now have more vulnerabilities as a result of maybe weaknesses in systems. And like Shola mentioned, you have to keep up with all these things. As they are publishing them, you are assessing your system. Again, this is automated. You're assessing your system against the vulnerabilities that have been published. Now, the problem that has come as a result of this vulnerability also is that you now have more time being spent on patching your system, more time being spent. In fact, PCI DSS requires you, Shola, you were trying to remember the other time, your PCI DSS requires you to patch in 30 days, critical vulnerabilities in 30, I think high and critical vulnerabilities in 30 days.
Yeah.
In the UK, the regulation is 14 days for critical and high vulnerability. You must patch them. 14 days. Yeah. And again, for some organization, it might even be more stringent. For instance, if you're working in an organization and they have a critical asset, based on their definition of patching, so it is not a flat or a blanket rule. Some people can say 5 days after a vulnerability is out, you must make sure that they are patched. And I think I like the example you gave that you patched the system and it didn't come up. And that's where you now have to do a risk assessment of saying, do we accept, we don't have a lab, we don't have any test bed. Do we accept that we cannot patch this particular system and then allow, limit the kind of connection or access? You'll be surprised. Some organizations are still using Windows SP. You will be surprised, right? So do they go and apply patch? They will not do that. They will not do that because the system will not come up again. But Microsoft will tell you, we no longer know about this.
Exactly.
So you have to proactively monitor vulnerabilities and also then apply. It's remember I say patch. Just think about a cloth that is worn out and you are putting something on it. You have to put it gently so that it doesn't scatter everything. Thank you, Shola. Let's go to the fourth basic cyber hygiene.
Okay. Just one more tip on the patch is, I know some organizations will outsource this to a third party. So for those of us who have it outsourced, please do not ever fold your hands and think this third party, this vendor has it covered. I can't tell you how many battles I've gone into, right? Some of them are called MSSPs, Managed Security Service Providers. It is supposed to be their bread and butter. But trust me, if you don't go in there, if you don't define the schedules, if you don't monitor it, then you might not get it right. So I just thought I should throw in there because there's one battle that I fought and it's still top of mind. So the fourth one, right? So I'll say the fourth one will be around email security, phishing. We hear it all the time. Some of us are tired of hearing it. Every time I hear phishing, I'm also tired. But phishing attacks account for, or I believe it's over 90%. I don't have the exact figure, but I think it's over 90% of cybersecurity attacks, which is why every time you open your email, there is something. My spam is never empty. Some are caught by the spam filters, some make it in, and some are brilliantly crafted. It's interesting that, with all my years of security experience, sometimes I even take phishing simulations and I fail because I'm unable to pick those red flags, because those red flags are not so red anymore, right? Before we used to focus on things like, misspelling and everything. No, you don't need to misspell. They can spoof your account. So it's going to be exact. Whatever your email is, that is the email they're going to use to get in. So, there's there is a lot, they say that we humans are the weakest link. It's true in a way. We're also the strongest link. We can argue that. For me, I always like to make sure that from the back end or from the tech angle, we do as much as we can so that we even reduce the amount of work that the staff have to do in identifying this thing. So why don't we even try and stop everything? I mean, definitely not everything, but as much as we can, like from the perimeter so it doesn't even get in. The people are meant to do their jobs, whatever their jobs are, they need to do it. So we need to make sure that those systems are configured correctly. Um, Same thing. I mean, I have a lot of examples. I just can't start naming them, but I've worked in places where there was really nothing configured, the whole, DKIM, SPF, there was no blacklist, there was nothing. So it was just allowing any and everything, come in. But there are certain things you can configure on those your email systems that will look out for, like you can stop executable attachments coming in. You can stop anything that has a script attached to it from coming in. You can configure it to scan those file attachments as well. I remember one of the interviews I attended when I first came to Canada. The It was for a very big news outlet. And I was talking to him about, phishing and, how why people should not click and everything. And he just paused and looked at me and he was like, but I want my staff to click. And I'm like, he's like, do you understand that we are journalists here? We are curious. We want to click. People send us news. People send us, intel. We have to click. You can't tell me not to click. That's probably why I never got that job. So, but yeah, so that's it. And that's my point now. We need to take care of that security, or at least as much of that security as possible from the back end. There's a lot of fancy tech that, that is in place now. I can't remember what some of them are called, but they do things like browser isolation. So even if you click on something, it'll launch like a sandbox browser. It'll run all the executable. We'll look for any funny malicious, behavior in that file that it's opened up, and then it'll let you know whether it is safe to open or not. But phishing is still a big thing for us. I think in 2022 there was an Uber breach, and that was the or well, it wasn't directly to Uber, but it was like an Uber contractor that was breached through phishing. Um, so yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Ella. In fact, I was smiling because in the session we had this morning, for those that are on the security operation analyst masterclass, is one of the session we went through today, how you can, I like the idea that from the back end, you take away a lot of decision from users. Once you leave decision to users, not to click or to click, I think it becomes a major challenge. In fact, one of the question on the session today was someone asked a question and said, it appears that those emails or those phishing links would have gotten into the organization. Is there a way that they don't even get into the organization before we start then addressing them? And Microsoft actually has those, configuration that you can put in place to make sure that they don't even get to your user before you start thinking that they will click on or they will not click. Thanks for that. We're moving good, and let's go to our next point. The number 5, basic cyber hygiene.
Number 5, I would say, is backup. Backup is very important, and once again, like I say, not just for the organization, not just for the enterprise, even on the personal, level. I know how many times in the past, like my phone would crash and then I'm like, oh, I had thousands of photos in there and everything was gone. So, just, that same mentality that you use, you have a cloud backup, either you're backing up to Google Photos or your iCloud. It's the same thing that should be in place in the workplace, you know, and I've seen it save us a number of times. I think in in my life, I probably have experienced about 2 or 3 ransomware incidents that completely, rendered the servers unaccessible, useless. The only thing that saved us in those cases was that we were able to just restore from backup, you know. And some of the lessons that you have to learn, because sometimes people back up, but do you back up frequently enough? So you might be able to restore your backup, but then you're losing weeks of data, and you need to be able to assess that, categorize what you consider to be critical, and define, then we're talking about RTOs and RPOs, how much are you willing to lose, how much do you need to get back to regular programming, as they say. So, and for me, especially when you're a security leader, you're the head of cybersecurity, this, when they say in cybersecurity, it's not a matter of if but when. That is the scariest thing, even just saying it now, my heart just did bing bing, because I'm like, what do you mean by it's a matter of when? Why must it happen? So I don't joke with backups. Like, those backups must be in place. Now, the second thing about backups is it's not just having it, it's testing it. It's possible to back up and not be able to recover from that backup. Like, when that actual incident happens and then you need to bring things up again, there's a lot of processing that needs to happen. And then, apart from the process, even technically, how viable is that backup? Is it going to work? Have I even backed up in the right format? There's just so many things. Obviously, you need to consider the uniqueness of your environment, the kind of systems you use. It might be easier for people in cloud environments than it is for people in on-prem environments. Still, this is part of the assessment that you have to do, the reviews that you have to do. I remember one place I worked. It was a cloud shop, and then they were backing up all their critical data sat in or sits in S3 buckets, right? And so there is a BCP, beautiful, plan and all of that. And there is, cross-region replication. So, you have it across regions. But when we now started discussing the testing, first of all, there was no testing. But the kind of response you get is something like, oh, the cloud service provider, manages this and all of that. But when you look at the full pipeline, that data, okay, so let me just tell you, if there was an incident and then, yes, one region was down, and then you said, oh, you have backup in another region. It is true that the data was backed up in the other region, but everything needed to assess the data, transmit the data, the infrastructure to make processing work was not available. The bucket itself was there holding the data, but how to send that data out for you to make money, or and even to secure the data was not there. So this is my point on backups, right? You need to, there is so much around it. And especially for cases like, the biggest threat that you prompt us to back up is ransomware at this stage. There is an organization that lost, I think, about $18 million in 2019. Like, I don't remember the name of the organization, but the reason why they lost so much was because they had no backup. So they were hit, or everything was encrypted, and they had to go start from scratch.
Thank
Wale, I see
you.
you have an input here.
Yeah, thank you. So this backup of a thing, I think you rightly mentioned, so ashamed to mention one, my WhatsApp. So I indeed actually backed up, but so my wife got me a new phone, and one of my challenges is that I find it difficult to change system because of the processes involved in me trying to get used to the new system. So eventually my daughter got this phone and decided to, restore, but we missed the process and I lost historical data. So Testing is very important because you can back up good and you think you are good, but it is not the day when there's issue that you want to find out that the backup you are relying on is actually empty. And one thing that can guide you, if you have done business continuity, you would have at least categorized your systems and know that we can't do without, well, we can do without 4 hours data. If we miss the last 4 hours, it's fine. So you know that your backup schedule will have to run every 4 hours. So if, for instance, anything happens, we will today, maybe 7 o'clock, we will be fine if we get back to 3 o'clock. So you have to do that assessment to know. Some people cannot even afford 1 hour. So they have to run their backup almost immediately and replicate it immediately. So yeah, I agree. Backup is very, very important. It's basic, but it's very important. Next one, Shola, our number 6, hygiene.
Yeah, number 6 will be securing your devices. Um, so um, laptops, mobile devices, uh, that would be number 6 because especially in today's world where it's pretty much a remote lifestyle, even when you have to go, like even when I used to do in person, I mean, either way, they allow you to take the laptop back to your house, which is remote. So there that laptop itself needs to be secure. It has the potential to have access to so much to the work office network. So you need to secure it, especially and when I say secure, I'm talking about things like encryption. And same thing, depending on the environment you're working in, you have standards or you have regulation that might mandate you to do some of this, right? So with Windows, if you're managing like Windows devices, you're going to be talking about things like BitLocker to encrypt the disk. And for I think MacBook uses File Vault, but there are also third-party tools that can encrypt the data on the endpoints. Why do we keep talking about the data on the endpoints? Yes, you might have, it passworded and all of that, but if somebody is able to take that disk out, they will be able to access the data. So, and we've had issues like this. Coca-Cola suffered something in 2018. I think there was one of the staff's laptop was stolen, and they had access to all a lot of data that was on that device. Another thing is also with I think we kind of neglect mobile phones, but honestly we should not, because for me I can work from my mobile phone. There's almost nothing I can't do. I can even connect to our cloud platform. I can look at, the buckets. I can review config. Not to talk of, the basic office task. You can access your office apps. If you use things like Jira, Confluence, they have the mobile versions. So sometimes organizations tend to focus on, oh, laptops, 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 but then we don't even remember that this small device, which is also very vulnerable, because most people are not patching it, you're not scanning it for vulnerability, you're not doing anything, but you allow people use it to access the network. So there's a lot of security that needs to go over these devices. So secure your devices.
Yeah, thanks, sorry, Shola. I think the point is made. The devices that have access to your resources need to be secured. If they steal your laptop, steal your mobile phones, are there functionalities that can help you to remotely wipe those devices? I think it's very important to keep, sorry, not to connect my system. All right, let's go to the next point, which is the 7th point. I'm looking at the time, so we'll probably take about maybe 2 more if there's more, if there's
Yeah,
none, if this, how many do you have more?
we'll make it quick.
All right, let's make it visible because I want to manage the time. So
Yeah.
the 7th
So
point, what's
seven
that?
7 point for me is using VPN, especially when connecting to public Wi-Fi. And a lot of people don't pay attention to this, but for me personally, like I have VPN on all my devices because you're at the airport is offering you free Wi-Fi. It's fine, but your connection, is it secure? No, it's not secure. You can have several people on that network. It leaves room for man-in-the-middle attack, meaning almost anything or probably anything you're transmitting over that network can be compromised. Or even when you go to like your friend's place, or in some cases, take for example, if I were to go to like the Toronto airport now, and it will pop up on my phone and say, oh, Toronto airport Wi-Fi available, and I just connect to it. How do I even know, first of all, that that's the legit Wi-Fi that is popping up for me? Because anybody can create that access point and name it whatever they want to name it, and then you go and connect to it thinking it's a secure Wi-Fi. There was a case. There's this dark hotel APT. What they used to do was to go to hotels, and they would redirect the traffic, right? Um, so what happened is, once you connect, they would create like rogue networks, or they would infiltrate it and run man-in-the-middle attacks. Once you connect to the network, they start prompting you to update, software, Adobe, or just even what looks like genuine Windows update. Then you download it to your system. They pretty much own you, right? They have access to your system, have access to everything. They install keyloggers. They say, start tracking everything that you have, username, passwords, everything you enter, they have it. So, yeah, I think VPN, we kind of emphasize the need for VPN for public networks. Well, are you still here, or can I
Yes,
jump?
I am. So I don't have much point. So free internet is free internet is free. So people just jump on whatever is free. But it's important because on your mobile devices, you have almost your life there. Your bank,
Yeah.
bank applications that don't even require authentication because they're already familiar with you. So yeah, I agree 100%. In fact, working from home and going, maybe you step out of your house and you go to somewhere and just connecting your organization over. Some organizations today, they would mandate you connect over VPN. So you can't basically access any resources except you go over a virtual private network. All
Yep.
right. Any more points?
Yes, two quick ones. One
All right.
is locking, like when you're away from your system, locking your screen. It sounds very simple and almost useless. I actually argued against it one time because I kept saying, "Oh, but I'm in my house, like what's going to happen and everything." But sometimes I host people in this house, and I can have as much as 20 people in this house. How do I know who is going to my workstation to press one or two things? So there's this scenario. There was a Tesla incident actually in 2018. I think I have it here. It says a Tesla contractor left their workstation unlocked while briefly stepping away. During this time, another employee accessed the system without authorization and exfiltrated proprietary code related to Tesla's autopilot system. So that is insider threat. That's even in the workplace. So, in that scenario, but you see how dangerous it is, because that thing has happened, but it has happened under your name. How do you explain that to anybody that, oh, it wasn't me? It's your account. You were signed in, and all this happened because you didn't lock your screen. So yeah, let's be mindful about things like that. Well, I can just jump to the last one, and then we can move from there. So the last one is just generally being mindful online. I cannot overemphasize the need for this because I have this battle, with my wife constantly. Like, be mindful of what you post, family photos. Sometimes taking a photo in front of your house that might have your street name, have your house number. That way, everybody who has access to your social media account or wherever you've put it has access to, knows where you live, right? An example now is it says in 2015 there was a U.S. Army experienced a breach, and that's because a number of soldiers started posting their deployments and some it wasn't exactly sensitive information, but it was enough for the attackers to glean and then, find out things about them and then start, attacking them and, spoofing their accounts and everything. So, I've heard so many cases of people who were traced to their house from Facebook. You see anything that has geolocation, enable your location, blah blah blah. You can never see me press. I think Instagram introduced that feature. I just opened it recently and they said, "Oh, share your location." I'm like, why am I sharing my location with anybody? So you have to be mindful of things like this. I remember seeing some security professionals who stood in front of the SOC monitoring screens and took selfies and posted it. This is the kind of behavior we're saying no. Be careful. You're not even sure what you're doing. Some people take screenshots of their work system and post it online, oh, such a hard day, oh, I'm hustling, I'm grinding, and then you expose all that information out there. No, we have to be very, very careful. Some people just kill their social media profile, their online profile. I mean, I'm on social media, but I don't anything work related. Nope. I don't do it. So let's be mindful of the kind of information that we share online. Some people have also gotten fired because of things like this. So that's it.
You're right. Thanks so much. But that last point, is I don't know. I'm probably conservative in that regard in terms of sharing. There are some app I want to access and they tell me they need to have access to my pictures, my SMS, and I said no, I
Address
can do
book. Nope.
I can do without it. So taking pictures, sharing, people share things that you will imagine that, there's this adage that if you ask maybe the older generation and say how many children do you have, they will tell you no, we don't count, from this part of the country I am from. They'll say we don't count children, right? That's what they will tell you. We don't count children. But today, you basically don't have to tell people how many children do you have. They are everywhere. You
It's
can
out there.
actually pieces many information together and you can tell the story of people's life because they are quite generous with equipping, you know, the bad guys with a lot of information. Share birthday, shared wedding, share this,
Exactly.
it's too much information out there. And as security professionals, these are some of the things that we also, I know the urge to share. It's there. If somebody is sharing things about the organization, you too want to share, but just be mindful that you're not exposing too much information. Thank you so much, Shola. We just have maybe less than 5 minutes more. We would I've seen some questions in the chat, but I'll just go through some of the things that I want to talk about also today. So we currently have this session going on. It happens on Thursdays and also on Saturdays. We've had one this morning, and it's basically hands-on on security operations analyst by Microsoft SC200. And we've been, Ayokumi has been generous with his time to take us through that program. So we're still running, maybe before 8 weeks or maybe 10 weeks or 60, I don't know. But we're using this as a pilot because there are other coming. We are thinking of having another one on CC study guide and also maybe having CompTIA study guide, just to have enough. Certification is good, but what is lacking for a lot of people is actually the hands-on experience that they can show in when they go for interview or they can speak about. And also on the right-hand side, you would see some of the publications I would try to make. So someone in the member of the community volunteer her time to be able to develop some content that we've shared. And we've shared things around MFA, password, and the rest. And if you have the time and you want to explore, maybe to help us share, you can reach out to me and you can take any part of it to just develop content and use it to educate the community. Let me see another thing that I have. Yeah, so today we've successfully had our April edition for 5th of April and 19th of April. We've already secured for 3rd of May and also 31st of May. I just want to fill the gap of a 17th of May. The 3rd of May is a lady, the 31st of May is a lady. So I'm looking forward to fixing a guy in between. And you can, all of our recording, both the masterclass and these sessions are available on YouTube. You can find it there. And also we encourage people to be active and also to, have something in their digital footprint that is cyber related. So our group is there for you to share. I try to go through the link and also encourage people to share by commenting and sharing my thoughts on what they have shared. All right, so I think we've come to the end of our session. I'm going through the chat to see the questions that are there. So Shola, there's one from someone and talked about, I think it's related to patch management. And this is about what if the vendor is yet to release the patch, even if it is a critical issue. So I think the question is, what do we do when there's no patch?
Yeah, so and obviously there are cases like that where even when those vendors are notified that there's a vulnerability in your system, it might take them a while before they come up with a patch. That is where you have to assess your risk. You have to assess the risk involved with that. At that point in time, there's might be nothing you can do. I know I can't remember, I think it was Trend Micro or so. It had a way of applying a virtual patch pending when the unofficial patch was released or something like that. I don't know. I haven't worked with that in a while. But if you assess the risk, then you start preparing or you start putting in place, compensating controls. You can increase your monitoring around, that solution, right? That's basically all you can do. You're on high alert, there's a vulnerability, it hasn't been patched yet. You're monitoring, you've intensified your other security measures around it.
Thank you. I think one that I think I can remember now is OpenSSL. There are quite a number of Microsoft solutions that are impacted with OpenSSL, and Microsoft has actually said that they don't think it's something to worry about, but they've released patches, patch or patch, and none of them has been able to close that gap. So it's there, right?
Mm.
And spot on, Shola, you just assess your risk and are there compensating control that you can put in place? Maybe you want to limit the type of internet those devices have access to. But again, assess your risk, and then it's part of the third party risk that we are exposed to, really. There's nothing you can do except you want to stop using that device or stop using that solution. The last one, I think that this is a contribution. I think it has to probably do with also patching, which is another recent one was CrowdStrike. Thank you, Bami, for that contribution. CrowdStrike, World Outrage, I think was on July 17th or June 17th, I can't remember last year, where the whole world was was faced with a blue screen of death. And it's a big lesson. Patching is actually a very big issue for organizations. Right. Yeah, October. Yeah, October. Yeah, it's October. Thank you for that, Barry. All right, I think we were good. Thank you, Shola. We will, in case you want to connect with Shola, there's something I didn't mention. Shola, you didn't talk about your ISACA leadership
Oh,
role. Yeah, sorry, ISC2 leadership role. So Shola is you are the chapter director or one of the board members, sorry.
yeah, one of the board members, the director of professional development with the ISC2
Yeah,
program.
I was going to speak about that our final or parting shot is, can you, just some words of encouragement or some thought around how cybersecurity professionals can take advantage of the resources that are out there, and also the pool of the things that they can do to make themselves to be more visible, and
Yeah.
also put themselves at an advantage, either resources or association to join or community to join. What are your thoughts? And we'll close with that.
Yeah, and very good point, and I'm happy it's coming from you because when we got into cyber, we didn't have a lot of these resources, a lot of these networks. I remember the only thing I had was the ISACA journal that I always used to review, but we didn't have these networks. You know, LinkedIn was very basic then, but now you have it. So for me, the number one thing or the key thing I'll say is make sure you network. Network, network, network. If there was anything I could tell my younger self, is put yourself out there and network. Yes, writing articles, posting might not be for you, but periodically, if you do have a LinkedIn profile, try and keep it busy. You'd be surprised at the number of, hiring managers that actually look at that and say, okay, there's some activity here. I think this person is keeping himself informed because that's also key. Cybersecurity evolves every day. You go to bed, by the time you wake up, something has changed, something new has come up, you know. So, take advantage of those associations. EC Council, ISACA, ISC2, whichever one, join, volunteer. I always encourage people to volunteer. I had an intern with my organization. That was where I met him. He was volunteering. When the company told me, oh, you can get an intern, I didn't need one. But then I just thought, I was like, who do I? And then I just remembered, oh, there's this guy who volunteers with the chapter. And then I asked him, are you interested? And he's like, he was so happy. And now he came in as an intern and now he's a full-time staff. So if you have that opportunity, please go offer your services. I mean, apart from the fact that it's just not generally good to give back, right? Just do something for the chapter, do something for the community. So in case you forgot what I said, network, network, network.
Thank you so much, Shola. I appreciate your time, and it's holiday period with family. We are happy to get your contribution to the community, and wishing you all the best in your cyber journey. Thank
Thank
you.
you all so much. It was really
All
great
right.
being here. Thank you so much.
All right.
I wish
Yeah.
everyone the best.
Bye, everyone.